so. Yeah, because I have all the emails here, and then this was
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry for the delay. We had some procedural things that we were trying to clear up before the start of the meeting. Welcome to tonight's LPA meeting for, my note says January. I guess it's March the 11th. First thing on the agenda is a roll call, please.
Cheryl Culberson. Here. Patrick Foley. Here. Tony Hammond.
Here.
Susan Raffanello.
Here.
James Ron.
Here.
Vice Chair Lori Lalonde.
Present.
And Chair Deb Gillis.
Here. Thank you. The second thing is the Pledge of Allegiance. And Ty, can you lead us, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is additions and deletions, emergency additions and deletions to the agenda. We do have an item that it's actually two items that we're having to delete this evening. It is the Sojourn property items, which is tab, hang on, don't have the right tab number, C and D. We still have an advertising issue with that, so we are going to postpone it till our April meeting so we can make sure that we have, I apologize, so we make sure that we have the correct advertising for the public out there.
It'll be April 8th.
April, what is it?
April 8th.
April the 8th is our next LPA meeting, so we'll have it at that meeting. If you would like to stay and talk during public comment because it's no longer on the agenda, you may, but it would only go for tonight. Your testimony or yours might be better heard on April the 8th. I do apologize. We thought we had it all right and discovered about 10 minutes ago we don't. No, will that be here or will it be in a different building? No, it's always here. Not unless something happens in this building. And I'm hoping not. At 5:30, yes. It's our next LPA meeting, which is April the 11th, or I'm sorry, April the 8th at 5:30. It should be a Monday night. Okay? Okay, do I have any other deletions or additions to the agenda?
No.
I have none from staff. Do I have any from the board? Hearing none. Moving on. Okay, public comment is next. These items are items that we do not have on our agenda tonight. As I just said, if you have a comment about Sojourn and you want to do it tonight, you may. We are holding it to a 3-minute, but you do not. It would probably, in my opinion, only in my opinion, your comments would be better presented at the April meeting. It's up to you. I'm just trying to save you some time coming. Okay. Anybody signed up for public comment?
I haven't signed up, but I signed up for one of the agenda items. Do I speak now?
In public comment because it's not one of the agenda? Yes. Yes, sir. Please state your name.
My name is Kevin O'Neill, and just as a point of order, you said there's a 3-minute time limit. Mm-hmm. I'm here tonight representing 44 unit owners of Bay Harbor Condominium, and I'm wondering if you could extend that a couple minutes.
Do we accept that? That's what's done at council level usually.
You can waive it to
Okay.
give
Yes,
him
sir.
a little more time.
I have submitted some written comments to you. We are going to be out of town on the 8th. That happens to be the date of the total solar eclipse, and we have a son that lives right in totality, so we are visiting him, and we won't be able to be back. But I didn't want to miss the opportunity. Yes, those are mine. I'm not going to read that for you because I don't do well just reading, but I'm going to use it as a point of reference as I talk to you. And
Okay, may I make a request?
yes,
This document, if you'd like to present it for our next meeting, please don't hand it out the day of the meeting. We usually don't accept packets like this the day of the meeting, okay?
that's a point well taken.
Okay.
Would you like me to collect those and pass them out again?
That's up to you.
I would suggest emailing it to the clerk
Yes.
for Almarata, even as early as tonight, tomorrow, and say this is for the April 8th meeting, and that way we'll all get it in plenty of time to review it.
That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. That's a
Yep,
better suggestion.
not a problem. And I want to thank you for the opportunity. You know, I know that volunteer work has no rewards whatsoever other than you're helping the community, and I appreciate your time. I am, as I said, I'm representing Bay Harbor Condominium. We are a property that's adjacent to the property that's in question right across from Sea Oats Beach. And the request for that property is to move that to a future land use map from the current conservation zoning to a commercial fishing zoning designation. And we are opposed to that, and we know that right now that land is what's called a non-conforming use of the land. It's legal, and it took me a while to wrap my head around that. How can you have a legal use of a land when you're non-conforming? But I understand it's because properties are grandfathered in when there's a change in zoning. Before the village was incorporated, it was a commercial fishing zone, and when the village was incorporated, it was converted to a conservation district. I'm not an attorney. I don't know what the Isla Mirada process is, but in most communities across the country, people that are grandfathered in, or property that's grandfathered in from one zone to another, lose that grandfathering when the property is sold or when the property becomes abandoned. And the rules vary across the country, and I'm not sure what that is here. But if that's the case, to change that now so that it becomes, and I think the words in the staff recommendation were legal, or legally, to do that now is preventing the land to revert back to a conservation use. So I'd like to just talk about a little bit. There's a couple of things that I like to talk about. One of the, and I used the village's documentation to put my remarks together. So the first thing I'd like to just give you just a sample of what's in your documentation. It says that this is talking about zoning, that uses listed herein are permitted on a conditional use or prohibited unless the Director of Planning and Development Services determines by written application that the proposed use exhibits similar characteristics to a listed permitted use, in which case the proposed use shall be in the same manner as the use with similar characteristics. So, and again, it's non-conforming but legal right now. And what we are concerned about is that if this property changes, if that's the rule here, if the property changes hands and it converts to a conservation zone, we will lose the opportunity in perpetuity to ever have that parcel of land be recognized as a commercial or as a conservation district or zone. And one of the purposes, obviously, of a conservation zoning district is to assure the long-term preservation and restoration of environmentally sensitive habitat. And if you've driven by Sea Oats Beach, you know that area is one of the lowest areas in the village, and it's highly susceptible to hurricane damage. You know, we just got done raising the road 18 inches, supposed to help with that. But if a conservation district on the opposite side of US 1 there would certainly help mitigate any future damage from a Hurricane 3 or 4 or even a 5 that would have if we ever had a direct impact there. So one of the arguments that the applicants make for making this change is that, well, look at the property. It's a conservation district, but there is nothing there worth saving. There are 3 native species, all, by the way, mangroves, and that's it. There's no wildlife other than the stray iguana. There's no, the land is pretty barren. It's created in the first place from fill. So there's no environmental purpose for trying to keep it as a conservation district or zone. Well, I'm on the other side of that, and I'm going to go with the reason that there's no substantial wildlife there, or no, plants and greenery there that is growing, is because of the use that it's had over the last 30 years as a commercial district. I list, and I've shown you pictures of how the current and the immediate, since I can't speak forever, but since about 1996, the land has been used, at least in the manner. I've attached a few pictures there to show you some of the things. It gets heavy use. It's heavy machinery almost every day. They stack lobster traps, crab traps, 8 high. They stay there for during off season, and some of them actually stay there all year. The other thing that goes on there that's non-conforming and not even legal is they allow things to happen on that property that should not be. And from time to time, my predecessors, my former board presidents, myself included, have filled out the complaint form to the village, and we usually see some action after that. But there's been a practice of allowing some very questionable living facilities on that property. Old motorhomes, campers, tents, everything else with no apparent toilet facilities. That's one example of probably a zone violation anywhere in the village. There's debris piles even today there if you drive by, and some of those pictures are on there. And those stay there year-round. They'll come and go. Sometimes they take that debris they don't want to deal with, and they'll put them between the village right-of-way and the walking path. And then when we call on it, we say, why don't you take care of this? And the village says, well, we can't. We have to see them do it. And so the next week or two, the trucks come out, and the village trucks come out and clear up the mess. But in the meanwhile, all they have to do is wait a little bit, and if they have extra tires, sofas, anything else, that's where they end up. But that also happens right on that property. So the rationale that we should approve this, because it's not a conservation district now and never will be, is it's a false rationale. The other thing that...
I am going to have to ask you to wrap up. You've had 5 minutes. So.
Okay, I will. Let me get to the staff recommendations. The staff recommendations, they hit 3 areas, and without any documentation in the staff analysis, at least the one that was published on January 8th for that meeting, or January 6th, whatever that date was, talks about compatibility with the comprehensive plan policies. It absolutely is not compatible with the plan policies. Your plan policies call for environmental issues to be dealt with, and that this does not do it. Another one is that it preserves working waterfronts, and they use they did put some data in there to show the size of this property being so small, less than 1% of all the commercial fishing zone in Islamorada, and that for that reason that we ought to make that change too. Bring it into the fold, let everything be commercial fishing. Quite the opposite is true. It's such a small percentage, and there are spaces other than that spot to store traps that we ought to be looking at it from the other point of view, saying that it's not compatible with the neighborhood. let me finish up with one statement from your zoning regulations, and that is that, I want to read it rather than get it wrong. You give a list of criteria of what you should be considering when you're addressing these zoning change recommendations. And at the very bottom of that, you say, however, in no event shall an amendment be approved which will result in an adverse community change. And I contend that with this change, although the current use may not change immediately, that there is probably a process in place that at some point this will no longer be a non-conforming use property if you allow it to stay as a conservation zone, and that it will revert back to a conservation zone. If you make the change now to a commercial fishing, it is going to be commercial fishing now and forever. It'll never go back. You are surrounded on three sides. You think of that location as a square, ocean being on one side, and along the ocean we have that commercial fishing property. But on the other three sides, and actually there's two spots on the ocean side, it's all residential. Some of it's multi-use or multi-family residential, other is single family, other is duplex family. But you're affecting a whole lot of residents. If this gets changed to commercial, it opens up other things that are involved in commercial, and you know there's some sub-uses that it would allow construction of facilities up to 35 feet tall. And right now there are no, or very minimal seawalls there, and if they build seawalls, that means they have to bring in fill. Then all of a sudden they have enough property there to actually build and construct things. So I suspect that the rationale for the request for the change is so that they can sell this property without having to worry about having it revert back to a conservation district. And maybe that's too much of a conspiracy theory, but we worry that there will be just a whole host of these buildings constructed in short time, and that right now hundreds of people have the view of the ocean. And if that's obstructed, our property values go down. Tax revenue for you will go down.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
And I appreciate the extended time. My full comments are here, but like I said, I don't speak well from reading, and I couldn't have read that any quicker than what I just did.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We need to move on. Thank you. Anybody else? Are you speaking on this property? Yes. Okay. Make sure the clerk has info. You need to fill out a sheet for the clerk also.
I filled it out for Dee, if she can just change it to public comment.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Your name, sir?
My name is Brian Skelly, and I've got a residence on El Capitan Drive, directly adjacent to the proposed property that is ultimately looks like it's heading towards commercial fishing designation. I appreciate the comments the gentleman made from Bay Harbor. I think he was very effective and hit the spot on quite a few of these topics that will affect the community. I've been coming to this location since I've been a teenager. I've watched for the past 50 years when my parents actually purchased the townhome at Port Antigua, and watched the slow degradation of Admiral's Cove occur over the last 50 years. And a lot of it has been due to development and the underside of watching and protecting this area. That lined edge along that roadway used to be filled with mangroves. There was, I've watched it year after year slowly degrade, watching and hoping that our view doesn't change eventually, looking out over the ocean. The one thing that kind of concerns me is the petitioner mentions that there's no marine life protected by the state or federally protected that's any longer in that area or that they've seen in that area. This used to be a thriving marine aquatic metropolis there. I used to swim it when I was a kid, spent a lot of time in the water there, boating, fishing, swimming, diving. There's a submerged barge that's down there that used to be filled with aquatic life in that area. As the degradation occurred, the pollution was part of the cause of this, and I've just got a feeling that it's going to continue to degrade to the point where there'll be a point of no return. I think changing this conservation area over to commercial fishing is kind of like putting a nail in a coffin. It's going to be the end of what's left of a small area of conservation area that we have left here in Admiral's Cove. Once upon a time, it was an aquatic area that was a site for people to come down and see and really cherish. Even with the residences, the newer residences that have come into the area, I think they've, I talked to them about what used to be here, and now I'm seeing what the future has in store for it, which I think is literally, I think it's a crime. That's what's happening. It's a shame that this area is going to go to a commercial fishing designation. Some of the points that there's 18 unit owners that are in our development there. One of the unit owners, and I'll reiterate some of the things that currently there's violations of the current zoning and land use that's there with some of the derelict vessels that have been there. We've petitioned before. We've approached council to take care of that. We've had some action in the past, but not as much as we would like. The sanitation and environmental impact has been severe on this. The water quality of Admiral's Cove is nowhere near what it used to be. The protected wildlife species, we see lots of manatee come through this area. They still come through the area, but not as plentiful as what we used to see. There's marine life, everything from tropical marine life that we used to see from swimming and diving in this area to some of the protected fish that are
You need to finish up.
that are out there today. I just think that the council and the planning zone need to listen to the people that live there on that site and are going to deal with this commercial change that's going to happen to our environment. I think I don't see any good happening from it. I'd rather see it stay as a conservation area, a protected area. For what little that's left there, let's preserve it. That's what the keys are about: is preserving our area, not ruining it. I think moving forward with the commercial license designation or commercial use fisherman designation there is just going to degrade it to its ultimate end.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak about this item or any other item that's not on the agenda? Yes, ma'am? Oh, we're not there yet. No, on any other item. Sometimes people have things from last month or something.
We had some people sign up.
On Zoom. Oh, you have some general comment?
Well, we had people who signed up specifically for item C.
They may or may not want to speak now, but they're welcome to. Van, go ahead. Then, ma'am, you can.
Good evening, Van Cadenhead, Isla Mirada. It hurts me to hear these people have so much fear about what's going on in this room. And it scares me also that the seven of you don't seem to be trying to defend Isla Mirada the way you should be. Now, there's a movement in the council to completely eliminate the LPA and allow the council to take over as the LPA. And I was here from the beginning, so I can tell you that that's a real bad idea. Because the council at one point was the council, they were the LPA, and they were the Land Acquisition Committee. There were 15 chairs all sit by the same 5 people. and there was a 4-year term limit on the seat. And in those 4 years, they have managed to make problems for us that we're still looking at today. As a matter of fact, several of the things that we're going to discuss later on, about the church and Sharon Mahoney and various other property owners around town, were done without the notification or knowledge of the people that own the property. And that's not going to get any better if you don't stand up for yourselves and defend the LPA as a useful tool to advise the council with. And it's going to be very hurtful to the people that come later if there's not any keys left to enjoy. And what this last gentleman just spoke of, I've watched that place. I came here when I was 7 years old. I was right there with Tony, and we know what it used to be. And it used to be a lot more laid back and laissez-faire than it is today, because now the zeros have come out, and once the zeros come out, then the pirates come out of the woodwork. And that's where we're at now. And we must defend against that at all costs, not only at Sojourn, but all across the village. This is the general trend is to try to put as much development as possible into each square foot of property available so that they can get the maximum amount of money out of that square foot of property. And this is not conducive to Isla Mirada, the sport fishing capital of the world. And I've called attention to this for the last 25 years. And the higher the property prices go, the more acute the problem is. And unless you staunchly oppose it, unless you staunchly defend yourselves as the LPA, then we're going to have a definite problem in the near future. I hear the buzzer going off.
Please.
And you've run me off of here many times, but as politely as possible. But I would urge you. I'm going to speak to all the rest of the agenda items as they come up tonight. But I want you to dig your heels in and defend yourselves as the LPA, and resolve not to be absorbed and subsumed into the village council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did you? Well, you're welcome to come back.
Okay, so we should all come back again, even though
Yes.
it should have been the 9th, right? Should have been the 9th.
It should have been, but if you wanted to have it legally right, we're going to have to table it tonight. So
Yes, well, of course
sorry.
we want it legal, but there's some important people that came here tonight.
I understand that, and that's the reason why I'm allowing you to speak tonight if you'd like.
Yes, and then
Okay.
I'm sure I'll,
Did you fill out a form?
I didn't.
It's just public comment and then the item that was deleted, right?
Right. Well, it's public comment on the item that was deleted and anything else that we're not speaking of tonight.
Gotcha.
So did you fill it out yet?
Make just public comment and question.
Okay, she will need a form filled out, even for public comment, that's all.
That's fine.
Your name?
Like both the gentlemen have already.
Your name,
said.
please?
Lisa Emmert. I live in Port Antigua.
Thank you.
Like both the gentlemen have said, I ask, why aren't you defending the village?
We haven't had a chance to speak yet, pardon me.
Okay, but we all want to know, why isn't it defended more? Why has the development gotten just out of hand? This is a precious commodity down here, and many times the money just says, well, we can just be made up. We can just make more of it. It's not. And it is so obvious that the damage that has been done down here by all of the money and the development is becoming so obvious. Some of the reports about the fish spinning around in the waters, not good stuff. All the sawfish being dead, over 50 of them, not good. This is a big deal. We're the fishing capital of the world. This is paradise. and it is being killed by greed. And I don't care what anybody says about it. It is a big deal if we lose our fish, and we already are. Our coral reefs are dying. No scientist needs to go down a coral reef from 20 years ago and not see the difference. And this is what we live on, our tourism, our fishing. It's a big deal. What is happening? Over 50 species of sawfish found dead in our keys. The grouper spinning out of control, the stingrays on top of the water, the mangrove snappers with worms in them that have never been seen before. This is serious stuff, and it can't be just fixed. How is it going to be fixed? It has to, like this development, all this stuff has to stop. Somebody has to stand up for this precious paradise we have. And the village here, and this is Monroe County, the whole thing, but we're in the village here now. It has to be stopped and stood up for. And hopefully, it's not too late. The damage, hopefully, isn't already done. So the question I have is, why aren't you standing up? I'd like to hear it, and I'm sure a lot of us would, and we'll be back. Thank you.
Anita, would you like to call the names and see if the people want to speak tonight, or? And if you just want to wait on your comments, just say, no, not tonight. And yes, I'd like to see you back.
Ty Harris.
Ty?
I just want to remind everybody, this item, the sojourn item, isn't on. We risk confusing the record by taking comment now when it should be taken when we actually open the item. So I'll reserve all my comments and rebuttal to what we've heard and what I've seen come through the emails till April. Thank you.
Next.
Given that we're an advisory board as opposed to the city council, I'm not sure that we have a record as such. We obviously can remember comments that are made tonight and carry them forward at April 8th and consider them then as well. But I also urge everybody to come that can come on April 8th to speak. But that is correct? Because we're not in a quasi-judicial setting. We're an advisory committee only. Thank you.
Okay, everyone who signed up for that item has spoken.
Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience that, yes, sir?
I don't have my name on there. I can fill it out, but I'd like to speak if I can.
Please come up and speak. She will need a sheet before you're done. And just state your name.
I had this big, long...
State your name,
Jeff
please.
Ropes in Port Antigua.
Thank you.
I've been coming to the Keys for 54 years. And over those years, I've seen it slowly deteriorate. Land gone, water quality, fish gone. Where I live in the lagoon, we have manatee, sharks, parrotfish, we have snappers, tarpon, Goliath groupers, everything. They say there's no life there. My kids have been coming here, they're 30 years old and 26 years old. I want my grandkids to be able to come here and say, and I could tell them, hey, we used to go to those mangroves. Are you guys going to let that go away? Or are you going to save that so my grandkids and everybody else's kids and grandkids can see how the Keys was many years ago? I don't understand, like the young lady just said, this shouldn't mean be on the docket of letting a conservation area be turned into commercial fishing. Never in my days have I, this is just, it's very unprofessional, and it's very sad. That's all so that I don't get upset as far as this happening emotionally. I hope you can find it in your all's hearts to forget about this and let this go, because I want my family, my kids, future families, future people to come down here and see what the Keys was. It is slowly going away, and that's not why I moved down here and stay here. And that's what I have to say for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Please come back next month. Anybody else want to speak this evening? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Jeff, you need to fill out a form for Anita, please.
Jeff, you'll need to fill out a form also.
Hermina Zavar, Port Antigua. I am only, the lagoon is there, and then El Capitan, a canal, and then our house. And I want to agree with everything that everybody else has said, and especially conservation. And they're totally right. Why even bother to have zoning if every time somebody comes with a few bucks, it's changed? And that's wrong. And as everyone else has said, the keys are slowly dying. This is not what we came down here for either. And we've been down here 38 years, not 50 but 38 years, and it's sad. And it's going to keep going that way if you keep letting development happen. We need more green areas than we do buildings. We need more parks. I'd rather see that. And if we stop what's going on the Sojourn property right now, the mangroves would probably come back. It would probably be wooded. And it's conservation. And the illegal activities that are going on that property need to be stopped, because we see it all the time, and nobody does anything. Thank you.
Anybody else care to speak to this evening? Yes, sir.
I didn't fill a form.
Just fill one out.
Name is George Ernesto. I've been coming to the Keys for 50 years. I'm an avid diver, fisherman. I've seen it deteriorate like everybody else has. I don't want to repeat what everybody has already said and commented on, but I will tell you, after Hurricane Irma, all those traps from the commercial guys came across our properties, toilets. I mean, the filth is out of this world. We have trash coming into our property constantly. The commercial boats speed. They don't go slow. They smash our docks. There's no respect. And, that's all I got to say. I'll come back April 9th. We'll be stronger and more organized.
Thank you. The forms are over there on the table if you guys need one. Anybody else? Anybody else? Last call. Okay, one more.
Yeah, my name's Cameron Davis. I live in Port Antigua, just right down the street from El Cap on Corcontessa. I see a few people I know here. I know your father built that property, the commercial, or not, well, not the building, with the, you could land the helicopter on, or I'm mistaken, I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry. I've seen you at Midway, though. Like a previous gentleman said, I don't want to repeat everything I already said, but I mean, that's the last thing we need is to rezone stuff for, more, commercial use. And, and we don't need another, not that Lorelei or Robbie's, everyone's got their own opinion on it, but we don't need another Lorelei or Robbie's right there in front of our neighborhood with a million cars and boats coming up and down the canal all the time. And, and possible, noise pollution and traffic accidents, lowering the speed limit again, just like they did between the Robbies and Bud and Marys, just all the other things that go with it. The Keys really are dying the death of 1,000 cuts. It breaks my heart. And, yeah, I guess that's about it. You said you're going to revisit this issue on April 8th?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
That being said, unless I have one last taker, public comments closed. I don't see any hands, so. Oh, don't let me talk you into it.
talk me into it. Hello, I'm Fred Schmid. I live on the Grand Canal in Port Antigua as well. And what I wanted to say, there's a lot of marine life. We see manatees almost every day. You know, big tarpon, porpoise come up and down there, occasional crocodile. You know, there's all kinds of marine life, and then we have the commercial fishing boats that's, you know, screamed it's supposed to be a no-wake zone, but they're barreling down because they're going to work. They, you know, so I don't think we need, you know, more commercial fishing boats, especially on that canal.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll fill out a form.
Thank you. All right, public comment is closed.
We have a hand on.
Oh, we have a hand up, sorry. Yes. We have somebody on Zoom.
Maria?
Hi, my name is Maria Newman, and I live at 193 El Capitan. I face the cove. We've been living there for about 2 years. The lady who we bought the property from told me that the lady who originally built the house on El Capitan had formed a group that was a conservation group in the 1990s. And I've been trying to find the literature to substantiate this. But apparently there was a move to put a marina. Our concern, my husband and myself, is that we moved there and we paid for a beautiful view. But the most important thing to us is how beautiful our mangroves are that are all across on that Sojourn property and the property next door. We also know that they're going to be building on the property next door. Our biggest fear is that we are turning this conservation property into a commercial piece of property that eventually will ask for another rezoning, and then it'll be a giant marina, just as it was being fought for in the 1990s. I'm extremely concerned that some of these issues will come up for rezoning because I think that you are going to be allowing on this property. I'm not quite sure about the exact zoning, but commercial property, they can apply probably for docks for these commercial boats. And there are already plenty of commercial boats traipsing through here every single day. It's not only the boats that traipse through here that belong there at the nighttime, but it's the boats that bring in their catch and sell to Mr. Lobster and down, you know, that area there, because they do buy from boats that don't belong in the area. Yes, boats do come down the canal fairly fast. They don't, you know, take into account no wake zones, and they also don't take into account. We put up a sign to please no wake for manatees. We bought a sign, we put it on our dock. But there is life. There is, you know, lots of fish life. There's lots of manatees that come in. I have lots of pictures. I even had a photograph when we were painting our roof of a gasoline spill, because they do sell gasoline. And sometimes you see a cloud on the water. If you have something that's been zoned for conservation, then it should stay conservation. Okay, it shouldn't revert back to commercial.
Maria,
thank you for your.
Never mind. Thank you. Okay, anybody else on Zoom?
No one else.
All right. Thank you. So general public comment is now closed. Moving on with the agenda. The next thing is our consent agenda, which was the minutes from Monday. We only have one item.
A little long, but sure.
Sure. Gotta push.
Who was it?
Got to get rid of your name.
Andy? Hello? He hung up? Yeah, they don't want to. Yeah, there you go. All right. So we're on the consent agenda. We have the minutes from Monday, January the 8th. I need a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call. Do we need roll call or can we do all in favor? Do we need roll call, or can we do all in favor?
Do roll call.
Roll call.
Jenny Hammond,
Yes.
Cheryl Culberson. Patrick Foley. Susan Raffadello,
Yes.
James Ryan,
Yes.
Lori Valland,
Yes.
and Chair Deb Gillis.
Yes. Okay, next is public hearings, and we have the first up. Most of the, I think all of them that are left on the evening, there's at least 2 items that go together. If I can get you to read the 2 items together, we'll discuss it, and then we'll vote separately. Allison, would you do the first 2, please?
I think Jennifer's going to read it for you. I can read it if you want. We're switching, I'll read.
Sorry. I'm used to John doing
We
it.
changed our minds. Okay. So the first one is an ordinance amendment considering the request of HVS 82 Investments LLC to amend the future land use map of parcel 0041584000000. It's an ordinance of Alamorada, Village of Islands, Florida, considering the request of Sharon Mahoney on behalf of HVS 82 Investments LLC to amend the village's future land use map from residential conservation RC to mixed use MU for the subject property located on Plantation Key with real estate number 0415840-00000 as legally described herein, providing for the transmittal of this ordinance to the State Department of Commerce and providing for an effective date upon the approval of this ordinance by the State Department of Commerce.
Okay, and item B?
Sorry about that. The item B is an ordinance amendment considering the request of HVS 82 Investments LLC to amend the zoning map for parcel 004158400-00000. It's an ordinance considering the request of Sharon Mahoney on behalf of HVS 82 Investments LLC to amend the official zoning map from native residential NR to highway commercial HC for the subject property located on Plantation Key with real estate number 004158400-00000 as legally described herein, providing for the transmittal of this ordinance to the State Department of Commerce and providing for an effective date upon the approval of this ordinance by the State Department of Commerce.
Okay, so Jennifer, are you going to present this for us?
I am.
All right.
Thank you. Good afternoon, LPA. I'm here this evening with, before you this evening with the staff report and recommendation regarding HVS 82 Investments LLC application for a map amendment for the future land use map amendment from residential conservation to mixed use designation, and the zoning map amendment for native residential district to highway commercial district for the subject property located at 88755 Old Highway. The property is comprised of 12,000 square feet. The property is currently developed with an existing commercial greenhouse. The form and zoning change, the applicant has submitted a letter of intent detailing both amendment requests, which is in your packet this evening. Again, the subject property is 12,000 square foot parcel in Plantation Key. The owner previously received approval from Monroe County prior to Village Incorporation to construct a commercial greenhouse on the property to support the flower shop that the property owner runs and owns. The Village Incorporation, under Pond Village Incorporation, the property was zoned native residential, and previously from the county it was zoned suburban residential, and prior to that it was zoned under the county BU-1. The property does contain some habitat, and a preliminary review of the habitat by the village's biologist determined that the remaining habitat could be considered high-quality hammock. However, the limit of clearing has already been established, and per the village code, any additional clearing will not be allowed. The property is not recognized as habitat to any state or federal listed animal species. It is not within the state or conservation recreation lands boundary or critical habitat area. Pursuant to the village's GIS data and records, the parcel is defined as some hammock along the perimeter with no habitat on the center of the parcel, which is scarified and holds the existing greenhouse. The surrounding future land use map designations, the subject property currently again has existing residential conservation future land use designation. The surrounding properties to the south are designated residential conservation. To the north, the adjacent property is designated mixed use. Properties to the west across Overseas Highway are designated public, semi-public services and mixed use. And to the east across Old Road is residential low. The character of the subject property is an existing greenhouse surrounded by hammock, and the surrounding area is mixed use, which is a collective of commercial uses, institutional uses, and single-family residences. Give me one sec. The subject property has a current existing native residential zoning district designation. The adjacent properties to the south are designated native residential. To the north, the adjacent property is designated highway commercial, and the properties to the west across Overseas Highway are designated public, semi-public services and highway commercial, and to the east across the Old Road is residential estate. The character of the subject property again is the existing greenhouse. The surrounding area is mixed use with a collective of commercial uses, institutional uses, and single-family residences. The flood zone is partially zoned AE 11. I'm not going to go through the whole analysis. It's just in your packet. I will just say that the proposed flood and zoning amendment would allow the applicant to continue the commercial use on the property as it exists today in the applicant's application. That's their intent. The proposed flood amendment would alter the development potential of the subject property. The maximum residential development, if approved, of the proposed flood amendment would result in an increase of either one market rate residential dwelling unit or up to 4 deed restricted affordable dwelling units on the property. But again, the owner has an indicated desire to maintain the existing property as just wants it legally established. And staff has recommended the approval of both map amendments at this time. Also, in the audience, we have Daniel Parabach, the staff biologist, if the board has any questions regarding the hammock and the habitat in the area on the property.
Okay, so we have 2 items in front of us. One is a flume change and one is a zoning change, and we can discuss them together. But when we get around to voting, we have to vote on the flume first and then the zoning, just as a reminder to everybody. Who wants to open the conversation?
The applicant is here too, if you'd like to hear.
Oh, okay. We can do that first. Okay. Do we have any public comment on this item? Okay. I assume you're signed up. You want to call?
Yes, we have Luann Bushlin.
Okay. Luann?
Thank you. My name is Luann Bushlin, and I and my son live across the street, and my family here, and I've been there for 30 years. And I've seen different zonings come along, but didn't matter much because I just wanted to live there. But this property, I just want to mention, because I had a vegetation survey done, and my property is very scarified because I have people that live behind me that have to cross my area. And I had protected little tiny critters on my survey. So I guess it's sometimes how the survey is done, but I just wanted to say that before I forgot it. But I'm here to say that I don't believe that to ask for a rezoning, I think the Mahoney property could be upgraded to another minor conditional use, like she was originally granted in 1996. That provided her for what the property limited her to then, and I don't see why it should be changed now. It was BU zoning at one point, which I guess that whole strip was business zoning. And then it changed because within a 5 to 7 year period, whole bunch of houses came in, and it became residential. That's why they changed it to suburban residential. So there were people positing that it needs to go back to what BU was, and I'm like, stop. This is like kindergarten to keep going back to an issue that's gone. I mean, if you remove all the residences, then maybe you can start to argue that point again, but that's gone. So my point is, something that she's been told no for all this time, why change now? Why not go back to what she spoke to Ms. Mahoney. She said that she wants to use it for someone that she knows as an architect for a small office. And that doesn't require rezoning, another minor conditional use. Zoning, that goes from the low density, what she has now, to a high density. And when she was given the conditional use in 1996, she was supposed to put the road on the highway. That would make me a lot happier. I live right there. And with Mike Murphy property wanting to do the same, I'm looking at 300 feet of when I come out of my driveway going commercial. Why? Why are the residents not recognized to be able to reserve and preserve the zoning that they bought into? And why do we have to keep asking these questions? You know, like, it's very upsetting as people from the Lower Mat is from, trying to save these keys for everybody. All this grabbing going on, it's like, I lost sleep last night over this. You know, a lot of my life is protecting my property where I live. I don't get any peace. I don't hardly get to enjoy my life anymore because of issues. 2 doors down the other way from me is a weekly vacation rental. I don't have any idea how that happened, but it did. And they have to cross a private easement that's my land to get to it. I have to look into that when this issue gets buried and find out why that's happening. So as I said, all I do is defend my property. So, thank you.
Thank you.
There's more, but.
I don't mean this the way it's going to come out, but if you could hold your applause, we can move the meeting along a little quicker, please.
Just a point of clarification, no, there is no office or commercial use that's allowed as a minor conditional use in the native residential zoning district.
Thank you. Who's the next public speaker?
Van Cadenhead.
And who's after Van?
And Ty Harris.
All right.
Ed Cadenhead again. Ladies and gentlemen, to reiterate what I said before, the problems that happened here are because we had, with the first council, the council, which was the LPA, which was the Land Acquisition Authority. And basically, by and large, they did whatever they wanted to. And a lot of these people, and I'm looking at the Church of the Santa Marata when I say this.
Anita.
A lot of...
Hang on a minute. Anita, will you start the timer, please? Thank you. Go ahead. Sorry.
Extra time.
You got extra time.
But these people were deprived of due process. They were not informed their zoning was going to change or their flow was going to change. They didn't understand the ramifications of what these people were doing. And they would have a council meeting, followed by an LPA meeting, followed by a land acquisition meeting, and it would be all, thank you very much, and nobody knew what was going on. And that's why we're having a lot of these problems choke up now, because Mr. Mahoney, Sharon's father, was good friends with my mother, who was the president of the Chamber of Commerce at the time, and they were strictly conservation people. I mean, they wanted to keep the keys the way it was, and this is in the 60s. And now the zeros have started to add up, and the pirates have come out of the woodwork. And I think we should allow people that had undue zoning changes and flum changes without their knowledge. They were deprived of due process of the law. The value of their property went down, and nobody told them. And now all of a sudden, boom, boom, you know, they have to fight. Like this lady here is worried about what she has to defend every time she gets up and looks out at the street. That's not right. That's not private, you know, quiet enjoyment of life. We should always fall back to the more laissez-faire liberal attitude of being the sport fishing capital of the world. We should not. We were subjected at the first council with a regime and a campaign to conservationize everything and stop, except for the places that they wanted to build, to stop people from increasing the density about anything. And that just doesn't hold water. It's not fair. It's un-American. So I would ask you to consider this when you talk to Sharon. I'm sure she can work something out with the planning department. I mean, even though these poor people here that were here to speak to Sojourn, I mean, that falls into the same category as why we're having problems, because the items on the agenda weren't advertised. Well, there was a whole meeting canceled of this committee because it wasn't improperly advertised. So somebody ought to know the rules if they're going to be in the planning department. Thank you.
Ty?
Thank you, Ty Harris, 110 Plantation Shores Drive. This gets back to what we've discussed. It's the original sin of the village. Van started touching on it. The village came in and rezoned huge swaths of property. And when you rezone and you change the comprehensive plan designation on 10 acres or greater, that was the statute at the time, you don't have to give people individual notice. It's just advertised. It was advertised in the Keys Weekly or the whatever the Key West paper is. So people didn't know. And now we all have this situation to deal with. We have upset property owners. We have upset residents. Nobody's happy. And nothing that you guys are going to do is going to make half the people happy and half the people upset. You know, Sharon's property was zoned originally BU. We've already established that. Then the county didn't do her any favors, and they downzoned it to suburban residential. But the building and the use on the property are commercial. They've always been commercial. So it's just right that she have her commercial zoning back. She can't develop any more of the property. And I think that's why you probably have the biologists here that can testify to that. You don't have to take the former planning director's word on that. But she's also taxed commercially, and she could tell you that. But when you pull up her taxes, she's being taxed commercial. When she asked about that with the property appraiser, he goes, no, you're commercial. You're going to get taxed commercial. So the village gave her a zoning that she can't use, yet we're still reaping the tax benefits of her property. Again, there's not going to be an easy solution to any of this, not for the church, not for Sojourn, not for Mahoney, but what happened wasn't right, and it needs to get fixed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Who's next? Anybody else?
No one on Zoom. We're fine.
Okay. So if I don't have any other public comment on this is closed. Sharon, as Ms. Mahoney, sorry, as the applicant, would you like to speak? All right. To the board. Who, you want to start? Sure.
I guess so.
Why not?
Why not? The property was zoned in 1986, nearly 40 years ago, suburban residential. So I think it's disingenuous to suggest that this was caught up in the village comp plan amendments in the 1999 and 2000 era when the village was incorporated. It had already gone to suburban residential for 14 years prior to that. Additionally, to my understanding, I wasn't here then, so I'll defer to others, there were advertised about 18 different workshops, subgroups, to talk about various areas with respect to what was going on as far as the Flume amendments and the comp plan, I should say, not amendments, the original comp plan went and what the zoning would be. That was done in 2000. That's 24 years ago. In 2011, there was an additional agreement entered into with respect to preserving the greenhouse, which is a non-conforming use, and that is legal. And I know to the gentleman's comment before, we have accepted and actually have in our code legal non-conforming use policies, which are, for your information, Objective 1-2.2, non-conforming uses and structures. And it specifically says that redevelopment shall be encouraged for commercial structures and uses designated MU and located outside the village activity centers, but only to the extent that impacts generated by the new structure and use are equal to or less than that generated by the previous structure and use. We don't have that here. There is no way we can say that, oh, this structure and use is not going to have an increased density or impact to the property if it's zoned highway commercial away from a greenhouse. And all of the uses in highway commercial, as much as I think Ms. Mahoney is a wonderful neighbor, both by my residence and by my work, we don't know where that property is going to go next. And once you give an entitlement, and you've heard me pound this over and over and over for 2 years now, and I've been on the council, once you upzone and once you give away a right and a conservation property that we have, we will never get it back. And we could not prevent then any of those highway commercial uses, where right now we have a legal, non-conforming use that was exactly what was bargained for over the years of a greenhouse connected to a florist at a time when it was suburban residential. And that's just been the way it has been for more than 2 decades. I was frankly, and then I'll cede the floor, I was frankly a little surprised when I got to the end of the staff report that the recommendation of the staff was favorable. Because setting aside a few of the very, very important and pertinent policies that weren't addressed in the staff report, more than half the report, approximately, stated that the impact was not clear. The impact could not be ascertained because we don't know what this property is going to be. That's exactly the point. When we do rezoning, we have to look at the maximum density and intensity that that property is going to suffer when we do a staff report and a recommendation. And here we've accepted, and I accept Ms. Mahoney's word, but we don't know where it's going after that. We don't know where this property is going after that. And we cannot do zoning for people. We have to look at the property that is owned. And that's been a continuing theme too. In fact, I heard the same thing, you're in a village activity center, your church is, so it's a whole different ballgame. But I heard at the last meeting, oh, well, we're going to do this because Reverend Hammond has been such a great steward of the community. I don't have a problem with that, but it's not about people. Just like the Mahoneys have been great stewards of this community. It's not about people, it's about the property. And here, we have all of the infrastructure requirements saying they're not clear. Then conversely, and conflictingly, the other half of the report inappropriately merely accepted that the applicant at this time does not anticipate a use change. That's what I just went over. We have to assume a maximum intensity and density. But if no change in use was anticipated, why the comp plan code change? We already have the regulations enforced through the non-conforming use objectives and policies in our code to allow this non-conforming use. This is an old highway address. It is not an overseas address. And that brings me to the fact that the old highway that is specifically supposed to be preserved for pedestrians, cyclists, conservation, etc., wasn't even referenced in the report. There is no way. It simply says, oh, all these criteria are met. But it skipped that one, and I think that's a big one. Much of the application was premised on the fact that there's already a commercial use that's compatible with highway commercial. That's because it's a non-conforming use. The problem is the rest of the highway commercial designations and mixed use are not compatible with the area. We have a large hammock that had been denied when Michael Murphy asked for the change from his conservation, in large part because it was next door to another conservation parcel. We keep kicking off the conservation parcels. We're just going to run the gamut of dominoes. And that's what it is. A gentleman out here said death by 1,000 cuts. And that's what it is. Once that property goes, the next one in line will fall, and the next one in line will fall. Finally, and then I really will move on, is another policy that's not referenced that's directly on point, again, is 1-2.4.3, which says you cannot do this if it's going to impact the maximum. And this application, frankly, just assumes there's not going to be a change, so that analysis wasn't done. So there's not a basis to change it because that analysis needs to be done, and it's not. Part of the analysis was done, which is to say, yeah, we now could have up to 4 homes or 1 residence with a commercial building of all of these uses for highway commercial. I just don't see how this encourages the comp plan to go from residential conservation, skip over everything else to get to mixed use and highway commercial. It's just death by 1,000 cuts. Oh, and with respect to the taxing issue.
Please hold your applause, please.
With respect to the taxing issue, I did see that, and I thought, oh, that's a little odd. So I went to the property appraiser's website, and the commercial highway building next door to it is number of units for land use 1,700 is 12,000. For the property at issue here is land use code 3,000 for 5,000 square feet, but environmentally sensitive for 7,000 square feet. So it is taken into account what the non-conforming use issue is, at least from what I can tell from the property appraiser's website.
Okay. Anybody else here want to?
Got some thoughts.
Sure.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to disagree with Ms. Raffanello on a couple of points. The first one I'm going to point out is that when the village incorporated and the council that Mr. Cadenhead was referencing happened to consist of Cheryl Bauer and Ron Levy, who rode up and down through town pointing out areas that they didn't already have housing on, and they would designate large swaths of anything, especially if it was conservation. That included all of what happened in Lower Matt. That included large sections of Plantation Key, big sections here. It's not conforming because the area they've created with residential medium over there, there's a quarter-acre lots. The bigger problem I have is that your building, which is next door to Ms. Mahoney's lot, keep in mind I did my first internship over there in law school when it was still the public defender's office, was downzoned or rezoned in 82, but Mr. Michaelis, when he decided to rebuild a concrete building because the building that was wooden could no longer obtain fire insurance, we had no problem letting that go back to the commercial footage that you now have directly next door. Yes, it is convenient that I give Mr. Michaelis credit. They maintain the trees. We've all maintained the trees on the property, but it is next door to your legal center. So she's putting a legal law office back there or something else that would be a quiet office, I don't have a problem with. But more importantly, I can't tell you how much when I heard Cheryl Bauer brag about riding up and down and rezoning large swaths of land when the village was incorporated. This was about 2002 when I was listening to this conversation. It was just amazing. She was one of the planning directors for the county who was retained by the village after we incorporated. I think Mr. Hammond is familiar with some of these things as they occurred as far as the large zoning. We had to fight a number of them. I did used to live in Port Antigua. I'm very familiar with the Sojourn property. I can tell you that the fishing village that's out there, when that changed to conservation, everybody was stunned because the only thing out there at that time were Australian pines. There weren't even any mangroves out there. But there was a whole bunch of traps out there, and they've always been traps out there. But that's not for right now. I'm just telling you how these designations came to be. There, in some of the residential areas, there were some very odd designations, but I have absolutely no problem taking somebody that the county recognized had vested rights from a decision they had, and I believe this is 98, 96, to let her have something that's useful, because right now, it's the way it's going. She can't even put a roof on a greenhouse so that she can lease it and utilize it to at least have some income. Yes, it's been a greenhouse for some years, but the bottom line is this was what she bought, this is what she was told, and there was a very bad job of anybody being notified that property had been changed, and it was a wholesale across the way. I think what's also problematic, yes, she's paid commercial taxes on it. You can't worry about what somebody next to you is going to build as long as they build within the code. She's got minor conditional use restrictions on it. She has all of that. But we have to let people utilize the property that they bought unless they had a chance. I have absolutely no problem with her changing what we're looking at right here. The rest of the middle of Plantation Key, with the exception of Mr. Murphy's 2 lots, are mixed residential. In fact, I would call it mixed use. If you go up and down through there, where it is currently, the Reef Foundation was a private home. I remember somebody living in it, but when I moved down here in '79, I could see the old road when I rode down the highway. There weren't those kinds of hammocks there. You could see all the way through to the old road. Then the Australian pines took over, and finally the pigeon plums, the buttonwoods, and the other things came back that should have been there. But you've got to remember, we have to let the rights of the individual that owns the property go forward. You don't want to get yourself involved in another lawsuit. That's the bottom line. But I don't have any problem with this particular lot going back to its status as it existed before the village took a wholesale approach to designating areas that weren't what they were zoned as.
And that was suburban residential. And respectfully, just to make it clear, I do own the building next door through a company. I bought it in 2020. The rezoning of that building in 2006, I would have opposed as well. But it was done in 2006, and it became established there. And again, and that's the domino effect that I'm concerned about now. And as she does have vested rights, and that's what she's using right now. And I think she has it vested, and the agreement was for a greenhouse, and that's what was done. But I don't think that we can have a threat of a lawsuit dictate what the city does either, because that's all we hear constantly. And if we went back to the way it was before the village incorporated and Ms. Bowers, I think you said her name was, went up and down the road, it's suburban residential. It still doesn't comply. That's why we have legal non-conforming use standards.
So I'd like to interject at this point that I was able to find and have forwarded to the rest of LPA a declaration of restrictive covenants, and also some of the original plans from 1999 for the property that shows where the excuse me, the conservation, the restrictive covenants applies. So that's where that you referred to 7,000 plus square footage. That's where that comes from. Is there's like 5,000 something in cleared area. I would like, if I can take the leeway of asking Daniel to address what else could be cleared, what could happen, knowing that it's a 12,000 square foot lot and there's a chunk already cleared and has been for many, many years.
So good evening, board. The very short answer is that no more clearing would be allowed on the property. There was a habitat analysis done before the property was developed in the 90s, and our code says that once you have a habitat analysis and then commence with development, it's kind of locked into that habitat type in perpetuity and the clearing ratio. And without seeing a recent survey, I don't know by the square foot, but measuring on aerials, the clearing ratio has been met, so no additional clearing could be done.
Okay, so no more clearing could happen than what has already happened. And with the square footage that's there, can you, maybe that has to fall back to Jennifer, can some of the restrictions on how much parking and it couldn't, that space could not obtain much more than the greenhouse with a roof on it.
The area that's currently cleared could be redeveloped, but the open space ratio would still apply.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that you can't put even though the highway commercial says that you could have a restaurant and all sorts of stuff, there's not enough space cleared already, and they can't clear anymore. That's what I'm trying to get at, is 90% of the stuff that's in highway commercial you can't do because it's already cleared and the limits of the clearing. Is that kind of a true statement?
It depends what's proposed to be developed there. They're stuck with what they have in terms of clearing.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? If you unify properties, for example, if you take 3 properties and put them together, and then they're all highway commercial, does that impact what could or could not be cleared on formally a single parcel? Does that make sense?
It would. You'd look at it as one parcel.
Can you address the habitat connectivity that somebody spoke about, the hardwood hammock and the habitat that's in the area? And I know we have discussions with past applicants about connectivity.
Right. A couple years ago, the 2 lots to the south was a big deal, and that habitat was determined to be high quality hammock because in our code, the old road does not constitute a boundary when you're looking at hammock in an area. So you lump all of the hammock around a property. It doesn't stop at the property boundaries. It's looking kind of at the whole area. And then there is a large area hammock across Old Highway on the ocean side from these median lots between US 1 and Old Highway. So as part of the habitat analysis scoring, you're looking at what is the property connected to in terms of other hammock areas. And that is a substantial portion of how the scoring could be increased. And so those median lots, if they are adjacent to larger hammocks, they could have a higher score and a higher habitat rating.
So how does that relate to Ms. Mahoney's property? She's got 2 sections of conservation areas that's in that same general area. Wouldn't that somewhat apply, that there is no other way of clearing more because of that?
Since her property was scored and developed, and the development that occurred was to the maximum square footage allowed, then that by itself prohibits any additional clearing, barring any property combinations or lot line adjustments.
Okay.
So what you're saying, Daniel, is that even if a future buyer were to purchase the lot to the south, which is native residential, they could not increase the clearing?
Not on the lot that's being discussed tonight, no.
Okay.
But that brings me back to, frankly, what is my biggest concern with respect to this particular application, which is the domino effect to the properties to the south. If those properties to the south then, because this one's now going to be highway commercial, those 2 are going to be highway commercial, if that was unified, it would be one lot, and that hammock for those other 2 properties would also, I mean, it would depend upon the configuration of the building, which lots got trees taken down or hammock taken down, but hammock is going.
Hypothetically, that could occur, and that's why now when you develop a hammock lot, the area that's required to be an open space goes under conservation easement. So even though this one has restricted covenants on the deed, it doesn't have a conservation easement on the property. So in this rare case, then if the 3 properties in the median were combined, then you can combine the footprint to your total clearing because there's no conservation easement on the property before you.
But doesn't the restrictive covenants protect the area still? Or is it because it says 40% or whatever? I don't forget what it says.
I'd have to look at the restriction again. I don't know if there's meets and bounds in that. I know there wasn't an exhibit that showed which areas were.
No, that's actually the reason I ended up pulling the original site plan to try to figure out what was protected. Okay, Don't go anywhere. People might want to talk. Who else? You got something? Tony, you got something?
Mine's a little more lengthy, so let's do it. Let me pass, and I'll come back.
Okay, all right. Jimmy? Somebody?
No, I just see it's, the pre-existing non-conforming use. I mean, I think we keep bringing up these two other properties, but this is, in my eyes, a little different. I mean, this has a commercial building on it, to my understanding already.
It has a greenhouse on it.
But that is a commercial building. Yeah.
My issue with the staff report is the intensity and density of a greenhouse is very different than an office, even assuming an office building as opposed to a brew pub or something like that is very different.
I'm reading that it's native residential, it has a commercial building, highway commercial. I think it needs to fit its appropriate zoning. I do understand, we have these legal non-conforming uses pre-existing, but I think, cleaning up some of those aren't the worst moving forward.
I don't really have anything else to say other than other things that have currently been said. I kind of believe along the same lines as Cheryl does. This was something that happened historically, and she does have a commercial building in place currently, and she's regulated as to what more she can clear.
That leaves you.
All right, so this loops all of this together, lumps it all together from Lower Matacumbe to the north end of Islamorada. I moved here in 1960, so I've been here longer than I think anybody that was sitting out there, except for Miss Mahoney and maybe Van, and maybe Van. I think we have an issue that we have to address, and that is for those pieces of property that have been zoned, like we've talked about with the church property, with her property, and we'd had absolutely no knowledge of it. So many people come forward since we had this issue and say, yeah, that happened to my property as well. I had no idea. And the truth is, because it might be published in the back of the Keynoter, which, by the way, for those of you wondering what that is, that was the name of the newspaper back then, and the Reporter, and you didn't read those. No one read those, especially if you didn't have anything that was.
We don't read them today.
Exactly.
Right? They're published today, and we don't read them today either.
Actually, you know what? I've started looking through them out of self-defense.
Are you looking for the obituaries?
Those I read too, yeah. I read those like, as Bill Cosby said, outlive that one, beat that one. No, so I think we have an issue that we have to address, not LPA. By the way, folks, for scolding the LPA as a volunteer group for not defending the environment is out of line. I mean, we are, first of all, you brought up issues that are code enforcement issues, not LPA issues. I taught marine biology and biology for over 50 years. So I'm at my core concerned about the environment of the Florida Keys. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Protecting the reefs, protecting the mangrove communities, protecting the grass flats in levels that the general community can't even understand for the most part, because it involves a degree in science. We are definitely in trouble. There's no doubt. Our job is to hear what's before us, to enforce those rules, and then make recommendations to the council. We're not setting policy. So what Van said is absolutely true. For there not to be an LPA separate from the council would be a huge mistake, I believe. So I think we need the two because we act as checks and balances. That would be a little bit like the cabinet, the president, the cabinet, the Senate, and the House all merging together as one. That would be disastrous for our nation. It would be so. enough said about that. So I would like to see us correct all of those zoning issues. This is not upzoning. This is corrective zoning. And I believe there are many places, upzoning is not a word, not anywhere do we find upzoning that I understand. We need to correct some of the zoning issues that took place in the early council, especially when it devalued properties for the property owners. And that's just not correct, not right. So that's my 2 cents.
I'll add in a little bit more. I've been working very hard at trying to protect habitat, protect what we have left, to the point that I've made individuals not very happy with me by suggesting that there should be subzonings and other areas. In this particular case, because there's already a declaration out there, because there's prior approval, sort of, through the county, even though they allowed commercial in the residential zoning. They allowed it. That I want to protect what we've got here too. I've only been here 30 years. But at the same time, we have to hit this balance between the environment and business. We all have to make a living in some fashion. And if you really, that seven down the line, we all are touched by business in some degree. It doesn't mean that we have to let it out of control. We need to control it, but we need to review it and allow it to happen where it needs to happen and not allow it to happen where it doesn't need to happen. That being said, I think this is one of those instances that, and I don't know how that came about. I remember the meetings. I do remember many of the meetings that they had on areas and how they did. I don't personally remember the group advertising of properties, saying that they're going to do this district or that area or whatever. I don't remember that, but I do remember that there was meetings. I also know that because I was involved with other organizations at the time is probably the only reason I knew that my property was, that I should pay attention to my property. I didn't see it in a paper. The only way I knew was the fact that I was involved in other stuff. And I do agree that there's zoning changes that were made that need to be corrected. We're starting to see a lot of them come forward. This is one of them. Actually, the Sojourn property is probably another one. But I don't want to get off topic. So that being said, I believe that this board is trying to protect what we have here. Are we going to stop everything? No. First of all, we're an advisory board. We only get to advise the council, but it's a good sounding board, and I think we're well advising with what we do and how we do it. And when we present it to council, we try to present everybody's viewpoint and what we decide. I hope I get that across when I present to council. That being said, any more conversation? Oh, okay.
As I listen to this, I've only been here a couple meetings, and it seems to be a recurring theme that the heart over the zoning, what the heart feels that is appropriate to rule on versus the strict adherence to the zoning regulations, the rules and regulations. and the argument happens
Make
every.
sure you speak into your mic,
please.
Okay.
Just pull it closer to
Yeah,
you.
okay. It seems to me that this issue comes up almost on every time we address a property that somebody wants to change. It becomes an issue between the heart. We want to, make this person whole or do what's right for them, and what is written in the rules and regulations here. And I have yet to see any clear delineation what is more important. I think since we're a planning commission, we need to put more weight on what the zoning, what the regulations are, and stick to that. But I wish there was some clarity of where this line is at, because with every applicant, every request for a change, it changes, and you can't. I don't know if we can fight this fight every single time. I wish there was some mechanism or some guidelines that would simplify this and say, yes, this falls into this category. And maybe, Susan, I think you've got a good take on that. I wonder if you might comment on what I'm saying here.
Well, I think it goes back to every 7 years, the Village of Alamorada was to do a comprehensive comp plan change, and that just wasn't done since incorporation in 2000. Instead, it has been amended ad hoc without somebody coming back to take a look at what was done, probably for efficiencies purposes in 2000. That was supposed to be looked at again in 2007. 2014, 2021, we're not there. We're still using studies back from 2010 and population projections from 2010. We're 14 years past that. So I think it's part of the comprehensive strategic plan that I know the previous planning director was working on, along with outside consultants, of course, to get that done. And I believe that may be because it has been 24 years. So if it wasn't known in 2000, I get it. But we know for this particular property, it was known, it would have been noticed for the building I now own, or through an entity, I should say that. And then in 2011, when the acknowledgement was done. But I think what got missed was the comprehensive overview that was supposed to, by state law, occur every 7 years. And instead, we were putting Band-Aids on problems. And now that overview, I think, has started and continuing. But, it's sort of a, let me get in there before that strategic growth plan is made. And I've said it at prior meetings too, I am not comfortable doing the Band-Aid solutions. Everybody on this panel can probably tell that, as hard as some of these things are to include this particular issue with this particular property. I don't like the Band-Aid solution. We need to have a comprehensive overall growth change to prevent the death by several cuts. But in absence of that, I don't have a good answer other than to say, I go back and I review the comp plan, and you can figure out a way to deny or recommend approval for just about anything with what's in there.
Well, thank you for all the help.
First, we have to develop political backbone, and we'll do that.
Sharon?
We do, and that's what it's hard. Sometimes it's, it's hard to take a position that may not be popular, but that's right, and that's what I think we're here to do, or try to do, even if we disagree.
Along those lines, I also think that he left. I was going to say that it is difficult to have tight rules. Every property's just a hair different. And you'll never find a whole bunch that's all alike. You do have to review them separately. I was speaking of other things, is that if you review one property that's in the same area, same neighborhood, we'll say it, and you review A, B, C, and D, then property 2, you should review A, B, C, and D. You may come to 100% different conclusions. As long as you reviewed the same things, you can come to new conclusions, because of the circumstances on the properties.
Part of it is the unique nature of the Keys.
Yes.
As opposed to having a large swath of land, and I grew up in Wyoming. In Wyoming, you can say, okay, those 10 acres are going to be a residential subdivision, nothing's been built, and it's planned. Here we're on a very narrow island, which brings very unique concerns, making every single piece that is in conservation or hasn't been developed that's outside, our code does have village activity centers, and it has them for a reason. That's where 24 years ago, so everybody who's come since then knew 24 years ago, that's where the building and the commercial areas were really supposed to be focused, with a nice residential corridor connecting the two from one end to the other. And I think that's been eroded. It's been eroded to the detriment of, I think, the residents. And that's not to say that they weren't hard decisions or maybe that got us here, but we are where we are now. So in 2006, an analysis may have been different than 2024 just because of that. But here, every parcel contributes to the whole in such a unique and extreme way that that's where it makes me fall back on the last time we actually looked at this as a whole, whether right or wrong. The last time we looked at this as a whole, and I'm anxiously awaiting, and I've said it time and time again, to look at the whole again, and it just doesn't get done. And it worries me that it doesn't get done because of the lack of political backbone and because others, may have a different agenda than wanting to have that done. I have no basis to say that. That's just a concern because I've been asking for years.
You look like you have something to add.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one additional piece of information that I forgot to mention earlier. Under the native residential zoning, the minimum lot area development is 1 acre. This property only has 12,000 square feet, so if you were to maintain the native residential, she wouldn't even be able to develop what is allowed in that zoning district.
Thank you. A little tidbit of information that's important. Okay. Any other comments from the board? I need a motion.
Call the question.
I need a
To
motion.
approve is presented.
Okay, we need the first motion.
Let me go back. Which one was first?
Flume.
The flume. We have to do the flume first.
Moved? Are we amending?
No.
Or are we okay, we are amending the future land use map? Okay. Move to amend the future land use map is presented in today's package on the property belonging to
Sharon Mahoney.
HSV, whatever. Oh, you make me read it. HVS 82. Sorry. I got some of the letters wrong.
Okay, I have a motion. I need a second. I need a second.
I'll second.
I have a first and a second, and I need a roll call.
Cheryl Culberson,
Yes.
Lori Lalonde,
Yes.
Patrick Foley. Tony Hammond. Susan Raffadello,
No.
James Ryan,
Yes.
and Chair Deb Gillis.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2.
All right. Next, I need a motion on the zoning change. It's from native to highway commercial.
A move to amend the zoning map from native residential to highway commercial on the properties presented as owned by Sharon HVS 82 Investments LLC, as presented in the package before today's meeting.
Okay, I have a motion. I need a second.
I'll second.
I have a first and a second. I need a roll call. That was Lori.
Cheryl Culberson,
Yes.
Lori Lalonde,
Yes.
Patrick Foley,
No.
Tony Hammond,
Yes.
Susan Raffadello,
No.
James Ryan,
Yes.
and Chair Deb Gillis.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2.
Okay, thank you. The next item, the next two tabs were the Sojourn tab. So we're skipping that. We've tabled that until April. So the next set of two tabs is the Island Community Church tabs.
So we have E, it's an ordinance of Islamorada Village of Islands, Florida, considering the request of Ty Harris, PA, agent for Island Community Church, Inc., to amend the village's future land use map from public/semi-public services, PS, to mixed use, MU, for the subject property located on Upper Matacumbi Key with real estate number 0040290-0000000 as legally described herein, providing for the transmittal of this ordinance to the State Department of Commerce and providing for an effective date upon the approval of this ordinance by the State Department of Commerce. Then F is an ordinance of Islamorada Village of Islands, Florida, considering the request of Ty Harris, PA, agent for Island Community Church, Inc., to amend the official zoning map from public/semi-public services to highway commercial HC for the subject property located on Upper Matacumbi Key with real estate number 0040290-0000000 as legally described herein, providing for the transmittal of this ordinance to the State Department of Commerce and providing for an effective date upon the approval of this ordinance by the State Department of Commerce.
Does staff want to make a general comment about the remainder of the items on the tab before we go any further?
Yes, the remainder of your items on your tab are here as a procedural matter. As has been alluded to previously this evening, there was some posting requirements that were not met for your January 8th meeting. So even though you had already reviewed and voted on all of these items, we decided it was in the best interest to redo these items in this fashion. I do not intend to do an additional presentation. I would just like to enter my previous presentation from January 8th on all these items into the record. Obviously we'll have public comment and if the board has additional questions, but I would imagine this is just procedural at this point.
I would actually just want to clarify one thing. Thank you, by the way, for just incorporating your presentation. We did have heard that before, but I was concerned when I saw on the agenda the fact that notice was procedural. We just saw a lot of people here tonight that didn't come to January, and I bet they would have been here had it been noticed on the property as per procedure. So I value public comment. I know that there's recently in the village been a lot of concern that that's not the case with, I think we always have, but with the village council trying to take various steps to eliminate public comment. So I do take issue with the word procedural. I know you did not mean it in that sense, but we heard a lot of new information tonight because of the notice requirements. So I do agree that it was not only legally required to do that by procedure, but the right thing to do. Nonetheless, thank you for your efficiencies on the last ones.
And I would just like to also say the error in the posting was not intentional, nor anybody's particular fault. It was just an oversight in the reading of the code and the requirements.
The code can be very complicated. So, okay. Saying that, moving on, would you like to make a presentation, sir?
I'm not going to make a presentation. I'm going to stand on the presentation we made in January. However, I would like to reserve time for rebuttal if I'm needed.
If you're needed?
Thank you.
We'd love you to stay. Okay. Pleasure of the board. Public comment first?
We have public comment.
We do?
Okay, we have Ty Harris.
We've heard from Ty.
Van Cadenhead.
And then who's next?
Trevor Mann.
Trevor, okay.
To further reiterate, I'm Van Cadenhead. What I said before, this was done without proper notification of the owner of the property. I saw in the 50s many movies there at that Cinemarata, and Wayne Bean was the projectionist, and he'd come through and settle all us kids down And it was definitely a commercial site at that time. And it was the hub of the community. I mean, it was a movie theater and we had nothing else to do. And the kids, we thought it was great. And then the village came in and decided that they would change the zoning on it. And I don't think the people that owned the property at the time, mainly the church, had proper information or conception of what was being done to them at the time. And it's laid this way all the way through the whole iteration of the church. It was a public service zoning that was put on it. But without having knowledge that that was being done and the deprivation of the rights that occurred when that happened, unbeknownst to the church, I think it's proper and should be remedied by allowing this to revert back to a highway commercial, because it's much easier, obviously, I believe, to have a pool of buyers for a highway commercial property than it would be to have a smaller pool of buyers for a public service, which, it could be a library or it could be some other motor pool for the village or a pumping station or any number of other things, public service. But I think for the good of the church and the school, who have been nothing but sterling stewards of that property and the property directly north of it for many years, I think you should consider recommending to the council that you allow them to revert back to the highway commercial that would be more advantageous to the sale of that property. They're trying to sell a property, and if they can sell it for more than public service is going to buy them, that's a very small pool of buyers. Whereas if it's highway commercial, it can be a lot of, but now you can have stipulations in there that it can't turn into another Dion's or a 7-Eleven or something like that. There could be, you could write things into it, memorandums of understanding about what is able to go on that property. But by the same token, the church was deprived of due process, I think, in my opinion. In other words, they did not fully comprehend what was being done to them at the time, and we should allow that to revert back to a more commercially advantageous position for the church and the school. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And Trevor, I believe you're next if you want to speak.
I'll defer to Mr. Harris to represent us.
All right. Do I have anybody on Zoom? Nobody on Zoom?
Yeah.
All right. To the board. You have an announcement?
Yes, I will recuse myself, obviously, from this. And just a reminder that two things. One, we have no one that came forward objecting to this change, and that we voted unanimously last time to make the change. One additional note that since I have the microphone right now, I will not be able to be at the April 8th meeting, so if we can change that anyway, I think just out of respect and to be here for the decision on Captain's Cove, we should try to make that happen, and I cannot.
We'll look at it. It's pretty hard to change the dates.
I know.
These
I know.
days. It's pretty tight.
I know.
We'll look at it, and we'll send out a notice if for some reason. But okay, you want to?
Yeah.
You like to start?
Well, I might
Why
as
not?
well. Village Activity Center. What is the phrase? You had me at Village Activity Center. Again, I emphasize in my own view that it's, as much as I agree that they have been great stewards of the property with Van, it's not about the person, it's about the property, but this property is within the Village Activity Center, which is what the comp plan says we should do with it. So that's my only comment.
Any other comments?
It was a movie theater. It was a great movie theater. It was a great place to survive Hurricane Donna when the Beans spent the whole storm in there. And the only question I have is, because I know Tony would know the answer, is Where was the parking when it was the theater? Because the Pier Station was next door.
It was in the back parking lot back there, and that shows how many people came to the movies, I think.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought.
I changed the marquee on a regular basis. That was my job as a teenager, was to climb up the ladder, change the marquee. And you may remember last time in the meeting, the last movie to be shown at Island Community at the Santa Monica Theater was The Godfather. And when we gave them the money and signed the paperwork, I climbed up in the marquee and changed the sign to say God the Father. And that was the way that happened. And I actually found a photograph of that marquee when it had been changed. So
That's funny stuff.
I think that needs to go over to the museum.
Yeah, it should.
that's a good idea. That's a good idea.
Anybody else on the board have a comment? If not, I need a motion.
Motion to approve again as presented on, what are we doing first? The FLUM?
The FLUM.
Okay, motion to approve as presented on the FLUM on the purposes of the Alamorado.
Community church.
The church, the community church, Island Community Church, sorry.
All right, I have a
I should wear
first.
my
I need a
glasses.
second.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, Cheryl Culbertson,
Yes.
James Ryan,
Yes.
Patrick Foley. Tony,
As much as I'd like to say yes, I have recused myself, so.
Susan Raffanella,
Yes.
Lori Lalonde,
Yes.
and Deb Gillis.
Yes. Okay, now I need a motion on the zoning change. It would go to highway commercial.
So moved on the ordinance amendment asking for the Island Community Church to amend the official zoning map from public, semi-public to highway commercial.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a first and a second.
Cheryl Culbertson,
Yes.
James Ryan,
Yes.
Patrick Foley,
Yes.
Susan Raffanella,
Yes.
Lori Lalonde,
Yes.
and Deb Gillis.
Yes.
All right, so we're on to item G, an ordinance of Islamorada Village
Okay,
of...
wait.
I apologize. Sorry, I ran off.
Motion passed 6-0.
And before you move on, the next four items are all related, if I understand the agenda right. So as we did at the last meeting, I would like to discuss them all together, so we need all four titles read, please.
All righty, so we're on to item G. So it's an ordinance of Islamorada, Village of Islands, Florida, considering the request of Windley Cove LLC to amend the village's future land use map from residential medium RM to mixed use MU for the subject property located on Windley Key with real estate number 00405350-000000 as legally described herein, and to allow the parcel to be included in Policy 1-2.11.3, Windley Key Mixed Use Area 1, providing for the transmittal of this ordinance to the State Department of Commerce and providing for an effective date upon the approval of this ordinance by the State Department of Commerce. Next item, an ordinance of Islamorada Village of Islands, Florida, considering the request of Windley Cove LLC to amend the official zoning map from residential single-family R1 to highway commercial HC for the subject property located on Windley Key with real estate number 00405350-000000 as legally described herein, providing for the transmittal of this ordinance to the State Department of Commerce and providing for an effective date upon the approval of this ordinance by the State Department of Commerce. I, an ordinance of Islamorada Village of Islands, Florida, considering the request of Windley Isles LLC to amend the village's future land use map from residential medium RM to mixed use MU for the subject property located on Windley Key with real estate number 00405360-000000 as legally described herein, and to allow the parcel to be included in Policy 1-2.11.3, Windley Key Mixed Use Area 1, providing for the transmittal of this ordinance to the State Department of Commerce and providing for an effective date upon the approval of this ordinance by the State Department of Commerce. And lastly, J, an ordinance of Islamorada, Village of Islands, Florida, considering the request of Windley Isles LLC to amend the official zoning map from residential single-family R1 to highway commercial HC for the subject property located on Windley Key with real estate number 00405360-000000 as legally described herein, providing for the transmittal of this ordinance to the State Department of Commerce and providing for an effective date upon the approval of this ordinance by the State Department of Commerce.
Again, I would just ask that my presentation from the January 8th meeting be entered into the record for all four of these items. But I would also like to remind the LPA that there was an item where she had requested for the Windley Key Mixed Use Area 1, but that it was the staff's opinion that it should be Windley Key Mixed Use Area 2, and that was the recommendation, and that ultimately was the vote of the LPA. So I just wanted to remind you of that.
Thank you. Do I have any public comment? Why don't you let Van go
Van Cadenhead.
I'll
Jocelyn Tiedemann. I was just going to say, as Ty did before, if there's public comment, I'd just like to reserve the right to come up and speak.
Of course, yes. Right.
Van Cadenhead, and at the time the building permits were issued for those two houses, I was sitting on the LPA with Ty Harris as the planning director. And Mark Gregg was there, of course. And I did not agree with the way that the building permits were permitted because it was permitted for affordable housing. And it was permitted for affordable housing because it fronted on the highway. Except it did not front on the highway, it fronted on the old road. So it should never have been authorized for affordable housing, let alone what it is now. So, I mean, I said that at the time, but you know, everybody on the committee recommended that they give it to him for affordable housing, so I went along with the group. And I really wish I'd have been a little stauncher in my resistance, because here we are all this time later, and Mr. Gregg's building permits have blossomed into vacation rentals. Now, vacation rentals in that area, I read in the agenda that they weren't in a residential area. Well, half of it is in a residential area. The half that's on Hog Heaven is not. But there's a lot of people that live right down that road, the old road right there, directly south of the subject properties, that are not too pleased with the idea of having two vacation rentals in their neighborhood. With the increased traffic, with the increased density that they would bring. So I would urge you not to allow this change to happen, and I would hope that you would restrict it to being what it was originally set as. How the this is a house built on sand. This is a disingenuous operation that happened there to get those building permits. And now that and don't get me wrong, they're beautiful buildings. They're beautiful houses. I'm not questioning the construction, but I'm questioning the use that you're opening them up to as vacation rentals. I don't think the people in the neighborhood like that too much, and I don't think that it would definitely located right next to a bar, and you could have two vacation rentals full of college students or conventioneers or whatever you want to have. It would definitely create a traffic clot, and I don't think it would be conducive to the quiet life of the neighborhood. So I would urge you to allow them to be utilized as affordable houses as they were supposed to be, which was how they got in, and not to reward disingenuous misrepresentation to turn them into vacation rentals. Thank you very much.
Just as a point of clarification.
Yes, please.
The houses were never granted affordable permits. One was granted a market rate B-pass dwelling unit allocation, and the other one had a dwelling unit allocation on it. That was market rate. There were never affordable housing dwelling unit allocations awarded to those houses.
Thank you. Any other public comment? You have anybody on Zoom?
No,
okay. Would you like to say anything or not?
I just want to say,
just address, thank you.
I apologize, 127 Coconut Row. Just to keep referencing neighborhood, it's not really a neighborhood. You have 6 full residential homes on all of Windley Key. And also to something that wasn't even touched on last meeting, these are overseas highway address. These are not old road address. I know that does make a difference when you guys talk about protecting the old road properties. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So just as a reminder of what Jennifer just said, last time it was presented as a special area number 1, and it should have been special area number 2, and I understand going to council it will be 2.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
That it was kind of a scribbler's error, we'll call it. And we had asked what the difference was, and one's more commercial and one's more residential, and it all worked. It should have been 2. Is there any comments from the board before we ask for motions?
The last time we discussed this in January, I asked the applicant, when did she decide that it was no longer a residential home and she wanted to make it turn into a vacation rental? She told me it was a gradual realization. I don't deny that may be your thought process, but I went over to, after I made the vote, and I voted in favor last time, I went over and just took a look at those places. They both remind me not of a single family residential homes, but rather boutique hotels. You could park 10, 15 cars on each of those pieces of property. It seems to me that the plan all along, well, I don't want to say that. It seems to me that these were not single-family residential homes as was originally presented. I don't mean to impugn any mud, but visually, and I've lived in single-family homes, even big houses, all my life, and so it just seems to me that these are designed to be vacation rentals, weekly vacation rentals, and not something more on the lines of actual family homes.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Just picking up where that is and the emphasis on the address, it's my understanding that the address is changed in order to potentially be able to get, I understand that these homes were not built according to affordable permit housing, but the addresses of these properties, I believe, were historically actually changed from Old Highway to overseas many, many years ago to be able to get a different designation. So I disagree that it should impact our analysis that the U.S. Post Office address is overseas as opposed to the Old Highway, especially given the progression and analysis that these properties have had. And then finally, I just wanted to indicate it is an upzone. An upzone is an urban planning term, and it is defined, used to describe changes to a zoning code made to increase the amount of development allowed in the future. So here we do have 2 single-family homes, which is what they were permitted for and built for. They're very large homes. They are I'm sure would do well in a vacation rental market, but it is not, and I said this last time and I'll reiterate it again, it's not our job to increase the profitability of a particular project over and change the zoning to ensure that could happen.
Okay. Anybody else? Tony, Lori, Jimmy?
I want to point out that the north end of Winley Key, where one of my best friends just passed away, who was one of the last residents there on the upper end of the key, there's one other property left, two other properties left that have, until you get down to the trailer park that was converted to condominium, that are not vacation rental. And one of the single-family residences is partially used as vacations home for them, rentals. You go through the small condominium that was converted, then you have everything else as a motel until you get down around the curve past the Bates Motel, and then you get to a couple of the condominiums. So in the north end, I can't imagine wanting to stay there, but it's not going to be of much use to anybody if we don't figure out how to modify the vacation rental ordinance or grant a restriction, put this on here with a restriction that it can't transfer or something of that nature. I don't have a problem with it being vacation rental. I can't imagine spending the night in front of hog heaven. I'm trying not to envision that because my head hurts. But there's just really not anybody left that's residential. Like I said, there's 2 homes left that are private homes, and only one has a full-time resident, and she's not here most of the time.
I personally think that the fact that we're using the special... Three?
There's 3.
Special zoning area...
No,
that, yeah, technically it's an upzoning because of the terminology, but the upzoning is controlled by the special area. So it's the only advantage that she gets is the vacation rental advantage. She can't build anything else. She can't take advantage of any of the other items that would be available in that. If somebody tore the house down, they could treat it like the highway commercial district would be, because we've used this special district on it. So what else? Anything else before we've...
to address Patrick's comment about the space for I unfortunately...
About what?
To address Patrick's statement about all the vehicles here. Living on a street where 2 houses are vacation rental, these are pretty good sized houses in Venetian Shores.
Cheryl?
Oh, sorry. You better have a lot of parking because they all show up with all their boats, which it might only be 3 cars, but they seem to drag 3 or 4 trailers behind them with boats and jet skis. So you need all that parking.
You're right about that, and automatically.
His point is that these seem to have been built with this plan in mind, and coming in after the fact instead of before the fact, is a concern that I always have.
Refresh my memory. Sorry, refresh my memory. They're 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom. I'm sorry.
4-bedroom, 3-bath. They're
4 bedrooms.
2,800.
All right. If I was building a 4-bedroom home, I would provide lots of parking because I know that I would have lots of family that has decided to come visit. And they would bring their jet skis and their paddle boards and their tow, all that stuff behind them. That has nothing to do with vacation rental. If you're building a big house like that, even if I don't allow family, if I've got a big house like that, odds are I'm going to have a house full of kids. Every kid has to have a car these days. I have to park those cars somewhere.
Well, having a family and having a home, I disagree, because the bedrooms are filled with the children that you have, period. I don't believe I've ever had a guest bring a jet ski or a boat to my house, but we can, I digress, but I disagree. I think vacation rentals inherently bring a lot more density and intensity and numbers of people than a single-family residence does on a day-in, day-out basis for our infrastructure. I mentioned that last time. I won't belabor it again, but that's my
I
concern.
probably would not disagree with you that vacation rentals do bring more density, but at the same time, I'm not sure I agree with the fact that she planned it that way because, as I said, if I was building a big house, I'd make sure that I had enough parking for whatever I wanted to do, even if it was my own jet ski and my own boat and my own car. And I'm a single person and I have 2 cars, you know? So
we already have a problem on Winley Key with parking of boat trailers.
Yeah.
We really do. They're parked on village property, and people are storing their boats and storing their trailers there, and for free. They're not paying to store them there, but yet they are. It's not just the vacation renters either. That's doing that.
Oh, you mean that Winley Key spot is not just a free parking? No, I'm kidding.
Which is better than down the street where they've got every boat they own sitting out in the median.
That's what I'm saying to you. That's a problem, and they're storing that for free. They're able to to park their boat and their trailer for free.
at least she's trying to put them on the property.
And you're 18?
If that's what they bring. I'm making assumptions here, sorry.
So.
No, it's okay.
I'm dealing with that problem already, and it's not my stuff that's parked in front of the house.
Okay.
This was approved last time.
Yes, it
Correct.
was.
That's what I thought.
I agree.
So we had plenty of discussion last time.
All right, so may I have a motion, unless somebody wants to have more conversation? I don't want to cut people off. But, I need a motion for the first one, which is the Winley Cove future land use map, changing it from mixed use to, changing it to mixed use, but special area number 2.
So moved.
You're welcome.
I'll second.
I got a first and a second.
Cheryl Culberson,
Yes.
Tony Hammond,
Yes.
Patrick Foley,
No.
Susan Raffanella,
No.
James Ron,
Yes.
Lori Lalonde,
Yes.
and Deb Gillis.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2.
All right, and now I need a motion for the Winley Cove zoning map change from residential's R1 to highway commercial. Thank you, whoever was doing that. We already had that.
So moved.
We had public comment. We had public comment.
That's right, man.
This is the zoning to the one property that has already been addressed, that the 2 were combined. We didn't.
No, we combined all 4.
We did.
So
Okay,
moved.
so you made the motion? Okay, I need a second.
I'll second.
I got a first and a second.
Cheryl Culberson,
Yes.
Tony Hammond,
Yes.
Patrick Foley,
No.
Susan Raffanella,
No.
James Ron,
Yes.
Lori Lalonde,
Yes.
and Deb Gillis.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2.
Okay, now I need a motion for Winley Isles, a future land use map from residential medium to mixed use, but sub-area 2. Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
I got a first and a second.
Who was
Tony.
Tony, you were one,
And Cheryl. They're trading places.
okay.
You can have it.
Tony Hammond,
Yes.
Cheryl Culberson,
Yes.
Patrick Foley, Susan Raffanello,
No.
James Ryan,
Yes.
Lori Lalonde,
Yes.
and Deb Gillis.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2.
Okay, and then the last one is the Windley Isles zoning map change from residential R1 to highway commercial. I need a motion
So moved.
and a second.
I'll second. Might as well keep it going.
Cheryl Culberson,
Yes.
Tony Hammond,
Yes.
Patrick Foley,
No.
Susan Raffadello,
No.
James Ryan,
Yes.
Lori Lalonde,
Yes.
and Deb Gillis.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-2.
All right. We are at the bottom of our agenda. You're welcome, ma'am. Chair or local planning agency members have anything else particular this evening?
Yes. I would like to bring forward, for Jennifer's benefit, and I believe back about before Irma, so it was 2016 or early 2017, we had a long discussion about notice on everything we were doing, because at that time we were still noticing on everything came before LPA. I don't know how it got out of the habit, but the biggest thing we had a discussion about, because it was when the Parmalee Plantation issue came up.
Cheryl, you need to be on the microphone.
Okay, the Parmalee Plantation came up was what prompted this discussion in its first incarnation for redevelopment, that putting a sign back on the property itself without taking it out to where most people would travel, which would be the highway or the entrance into a community, was something that needed to be happened. I was under the impression it had passed the council, but apparently it has disappeared. So it's something we probably need to suggest back to council or bring it up to ourselves again. But it made a huge difference when we were posting the signs, not back in the neighborhood, for instance, back in Venetian Shores or back in the Colony, but you posted back there on the property impacted, but out at the highway where you entered that neighborhood.
So you're talking a secondary sign?
It's a secondary sign.
Sorry, I just, I believe that that's in place.
Is it in place?
It places signs, it's every 200 feet, and then places signs no more than 25 feet from the street, so lettering is visible from the street. Where the land does not have frontage on the street, signs shall be erected on the nearest street with the attached notation indicating generally the direction and distance to the property of the application. But you're saying even if you're front of street, you take it out to the...
Perfect examples, Port Antigua. Port Antigua technically does not start until you get back where you turn onto Gulfside. So if you're driving by the neighborhood, which you're in White Marlin Beach or the other way, you're not going to see it because you're not turning down that street. But if it's posted out on US 1 or the old road, which is where the majority of the traffic has to cross, you're going to have notice. Same thing with the old road. I don't go down the old road that often unless the traffic's really bad. But there's a lot of parcels back there, for instance, wherever they've had the highway patrol stand, down Aragood, I think it is. If there was something going on at the end of Aragood, it would not be posted on the road and we wouldn't necessarily know about it. So it was a specific discussion. It needs to go to a major artery.
No, I
and
agree with
it's not that hard. It's just a secondary sign. But it posts on whatever the major artery is that enters the community where the property is located.
I'll have to look into that, but I think it might pose a little bit of an issue if we don't own any property there, we can't post property on private, we can't post a sign on private property.
Can we post it on the right of way?
I mean, I'd have to have a conversation with the public works director about that. He doesn't typically like.
We had that conversation and it made a difference in some of our hearings because people back in those communities, and at the time it was Venetian Shores that was having all the problems because of the roads.
You're suggesting two signs, one on the property.
On the property and then out at the entrance off of whatever major artery is on that island to get into that community so that you have warning. I don't see what's on other streets in my neighborhood if I don't go all the way down through the neighborhood. But if I see it at the entrance to Venetian Shores or if I see it at the entrance to the Colony, especially since almost everybody's turned over their landscaping to the village, there's no reason we can't work that out.
All right, any other public comment?
That's all I've got.
Or any other comment from the board?
Quick question. So is upzoning in our language, Susan, in the village language, or is that a?
It's not a definition
Well-
of the village code, but it is a planning term.
Okay, I knew we didn't have it in our code. That was what I was referring to. So I'm just checking because if we're going to refer to it that way, we need to refer to it that way.
So I just need to ask about the next meeting because Tony said he wasn't going to be here. And then Jim's going to need to recuse himself from sojourn. So that means that everybody else needs to be here for us to move forward. So if there's anybody who knows right now they're not going to be here, we need to know. But if you don't know right now, but you know as soon as...
I'm going to have to let you know because I have a caregiver issue.
Okay, so let me know as soon as possible. And then...
That was April the 8th.
April the 8th, yes, please.
Then let me put this on the record now. In 2 years, we've never, for the city council's benefit, we have never not had a meeting due to lack of quorum. So I'll put it on the record now while it's a true statement.
It is a true statement. Well, maybe one. There might have been. I don't remember one. Not
I
since
haven't
you've
done the
been on it,
research
but-
yet. I know that's one of my things to do the research on.
Christmas one.
And then I know you had maybe a couple months ago asked about me about the possibility of moving, if I needed you to move the meeting because council meetings the same week. And so if that's still on the table, I would greatly ask if the LPA would look at potentially moving the meeting to a different week. It's just becoming very stressful and a lot.
Can you, I thought it might. Can you provide all of us through an email or something, an opportunity of what week you're talking so that we can look at our calendars and see if
I can
the
make
first,
some
second, third, or fourth is better? Make a recommendation for us, and we can discuss it at the next meeting then. Put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
That.
Okay? Correct. Okay, future agenda items, we just discussed that. Planning director, village manager, we've already handled all that. Next date of the meeting, we've talked about that. Village attorney, Madam Attorney. Welcome. We don't get to see your smiling face very often.
You can't really see it, but yeah.
Oh, I can't see it anyway. Oh, never mind. Now I need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, my goodness. I'll second.